Awesome. Eddie Quintal, welcome to the tea shop. I know
Thank you.
nothing about you, so you have to fill us in about every detail about your life. But we'll start about with present day Eddie. Who are you? Where you live? And which city you come from in India? If you weren't born there, then your original city. And then we'll just dive into the details. And as you say things about your life, we'll just ask about it and take it from there and just get to know you, not just Eddie the. Okay, Boof, I know a little bit because I stalked you on LinkedIn, so let me set the scene for who Eddie is and what we can learn from him. Eddie worked in some of the biggest companies in the world, like Humana for one. If you're not in the US, you probably don't know what Humana. If you're in the US, you've heard of Humana. And he led a team of like 200 people and 4 managers. So, and Eddie has had a lot of leadership roles in his life at some of the biggest companies in the world. So while Eddie seems humble and we'll talk about his life, I also want to learn because he is in a place all of us would like to get to. So it's great to speak to those people who have done it and learn some leadership and some management aspects as well from Eddie's life and learn about all the fun Anglo things as well. Right, Eddie? So that let's get to know you. Who are you? Where you are, and where you come from.
All right, Conrad. First, thanks for having me. Thanks to Sheldon, if he listens in, for recommending me. I'm honored. And your introduction was very biased towards me. Not that, but thank you for the nice introduction. Uh, so, where do I come from? I straddled two large Anglo-Indian communities in India. When I say straddled, I mean I was uh, the first 25 years of my life I spent in Calcutta, which is now better known as Kolkata, or is known as Kolkata in West Bengal, where it had a strong Anglo-Indian, community and culture. And then my mom and dad were originally from Madras, now known as Chennai. Yeah, my mom was from Pallavaram, my dad was from Perambur, so we grew up a lot listening to uh, in the home about the Perambur loafers and the Pallavaram loafers.
I love it. I love it. Yes.
Yes.
You passed the Anglo test. You're 100% Anglo. Okay.
That was ingrained in my mind at a very young age.
Yeah.
The loafers came from which town of
Yeah.
Chennai or
Yeah.
Madras. And then, for very interesting reasons, which I have never said publicly before, I'll say it now. Uh, while I was studying in Calcutta in a school called Park English, my dad moved my brother and me. We're actually three of us. My brother, Ronnie, who's no more. Uh, I'm in the middle, and my sister, Crystal, who's in Chennai. Uh, and there were three of us, but my sister was much younger to us, and we were moved to Chennai St. Bedes boarding school. And it was an interesting reason for us moving, even though the family was in Calcutta, moving Ronnie
Yeah.
and me to St. Bede's in Chennai. One was because that's where my mom and dad's roots were. And two was my dad went to our school, Park English School, one day to take us out for lunch. And, those are very different days, early, mid 70s. And my dad went to Mr. Peterson, who was the principal, and said, can I take my children out early today? I'm taking them out for lunch. And Mr. Peterson said, Mr. Quintal, I've been wanting to contact you. Your children haven't come to school for 2 weeks.
Wow. Here we go. Juicy stories.
And then in the evening, my mom told us, hey, your dad's crazy, angry with you. Where were you guys? What were you doing? And actually, what we were doing, Ronnie and I, we were we had a tram pass, the trams in Calcutta, even now. And so we would go from one terminus of the tram, which was close to our house, to the next terminus and keep going up and down, reading Indrajil comics the whole day.
Hey, yeah.
We'd never get off the tram until it was time to go home. And so when dad came home, we thought, oh my God, we are in some serious trouble. But the next thing we knew, lock, stock, and barrel, we were in St. Bede's, far away from Calcutta, almost, you know, 900, 800,
Yeah.
900 miles away. And there was no way we could not go. So we were forced to be in school and study. So my education was in St. Bede's. And then after St. Bede's, I went back to Calcutta because my mom and dad were still there. I started my working life. I started my working life with the Oberoys. Got fine-tuned into fine dining and all that kind of stuff. And it was very interesting because I'd never been into a five-star hotel. In 1984 was the first time I walked in. I was freaked out to see in those days. And for those who are much younger, yeah, I was completely freaked out because you would see that, flames burning under the serving dishes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never seen something
When
like
to
that.
use a fork and a knife, how to use a fork and a knife,
Yeah,
that whole combination. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and stuff like that. And then in 1992, my dad was close to retirement, wanted to move back to his base, which was Madras, Chennai. And so my mom, my sister, and my dad were going to move back, and my mom insisted I move with her. And so I was also part of a large community in my mid 20s, early 20s of Madras, which is my actual roots because my mom and dad come from there. So I feel I belong
Yeah.
more to Chennai
Yeah.
than Calcutta, even though Calcutta is my base and I'm
Yeah.
planning to visit Calcutta in May.
Yeah.
But I have a strong emotional attachment, and my mom and dad are buried there. My brother's buried there. I met my wife there. I got married over there. So
In Madras or Calcutta?
in
In
Madras,
Madras, okay. And when you say
yeah.
you moved in your 20s, you moved to Pallavaram, right?
No, I moved to Perambur.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, we moved to Perambur. That's my dad's hometown, and obviously Pallavaram was my mom's hometown, but I don't see my dad move to
Wow.
We moved to
Pallavaram and
Perambur.
Perambur.
Yeah, and we lived in a house on Main Road we rented, and we lived over there, just opposite the convent. And we lived there for about a year. Then we moved to Madhavaram, and that's where we lived till I left Chennai and went on to Bangalore for for a job. And from Bangalore, I traveled to Hyderabad. I lived there for a couple of years. Then I was in Bombay for a couple of years, all for my job. And then I was in a small town called Durgapur before in 2009, my wife and I immigrated to the US. Now, there's a caveat to that. In
Let's hear it.
2000, in 2009,
Yeah.
people want to, why did we come to the US, or how did I come to the US? My wife, when I met her in 1992, was a divorcee with two sons, and she had two sons, Calvin Peterson and Dale Peterson. She was married to Peterson before she met me. She was divorced when I met her, and I married her. And Calvin and Dale were young boys, and they had come to the US in 2003. And in 2007 or 8, I think it was, when Monica came here for a vacation, and they sponsored us to stay back. So in 2009, we immigrated lock, stock, and barrel. That's how we came
Nice.
to the
So
US.
your wife's name is Monica?
Yes, that's
Okay,
right.
awesome.
I should have said that earlier.
No worries. Awesome. That's
Delete
quite the
that.
story.
Edit that portion.
So 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 many questions because of where you lived, the two places you lived in. But um, did you know the Wards in Calcutta? Like Kevin Ward's family. You have you met Kevin Ward here?
I haven't met him over here, but
Okay.
the Wards, I am very familiar with that name for more reasons than one. But I did leave Calcutta in 1992, and I have some friends there who I chat with at least once a week. But the Wards is a very familiar name. I'm sure if I speak to them, we'll find common friends, and somewhere
Absolutely.
we have
Yeah.
met.
Yeah. Yeah. His whole I think Kevin's family is like Calcutta royalty, perhaps. They go back generations, and they were involved in the school system, which is almost like the hub, right? Even if you don't live in his area, you're probably going to school and you're interacting with the Wards at school.
Yeah, I think they were from a school. I'm not sure. I may be wrong, but I like to mention. I think they were associated with St. Thomas School, Kirako.
I forget the name of the school. I'll have to listen to that podcast again. Yes, but yeah, Kevin Ward. And secondly, because you grew up, because you of where you lived in Perambur, um, do you know Jeff Rigo?
Mm,
I know he kind of straddled two communities as well, so you might not have your paths might not have overlapped. But if you know, but you've met Jeff here, right? Have you ever been to the Anglo-Indian dance that Sheldon hosts?
yes, I have.
Okay,
I'm sure I met him then because
yeah,
I've been to two of them.
yeah. Okay, so Jeff also grew like he spent a little bit of time, probably close to where you lived on Perambur on the main road,
Okay.
But he also spent quite a bit of time in Andhra Pradesh, Bezawada. Yeah. So the most important. So you are very unique in the sense that when you say Anglo Indians, right? At least for the people in the south, they assume Madras is the hub, and specifically Perambur is the hub for. It's the I joke and say it's the Anglo Indian capital of the world. But then there's Calcutta as well, right? That also has a large, thriving community. And I don't know anything about that. I did not go to Calcutta and spend time with. I've just traveled through it. But you having lived in both places, right? What's your take? Is it like, how would you compare Perambur Anglos and Calcutta Anglos specifically? Is it the same density? Like, is there like a street that you can go to in Calcutta that's just Anglo Indians have taken over it, at least growing up as a kid? Because Main Street, right? You can walk down Main Street and you can walk down like 10 Anglo Indian houses in a row, a break, and then another 10, right? It's the density of Anglos was just amazing. So how can you compare wherever you grew up, or parts of Calcutta that you are aware of, and settle the debate of which one's the Anglo-Indian capital of the world? Hint, Perambur. Okay.
So actually, there's not much difference in terms of when you're to talk about the geography of how we as a community congregate and strive with proximity to each other. So that is not far much different than Anglo. I mean, in Calcutta, the Anglo Indians congregated in the what was called Central Calcutta, which was and not anymore, but they moved to another spot which I'll name. Ripon Street, Elliott Road, Park Circus. These were the areas located where Anglo Indians would be predominantly communities, large communities, back-to-back housing, side-by-side housing. Now they've moved, I gather from close friends, they moved to places like picnic gardens and Pihala and stuff like that. Just like Madras. I keep wanting to say Chennai and Madras. I get
Yeah,
confused.
yeah,
But just like Chennai. I mean, you had people in Vepri, you have people in Perambur, you have people in Pallavaram, you had people in huge community in St. Thomas Mount,
yeah,
a large community in
yeah,
Tambaram. So just like that. But even there now, people have started to go into the suburbs. I mean, about 2 decades back, people from Perambur started selling out, or if they were renting, leaving the house and moving to Madhavaram
yeah,
and Milk Colony and stuff like that. So that
yeah,
kind of migration happened for,
yeah,
um, I would say mainly economical purposes, objectives. And the same happened in Calcutta. So from central Calcutta, uh, they started moving, more towards, I think it's the east, to for economical
yeah.
purposes.
Sure.
Rents were cheaper,
Yeah,
houses were cheaper, and stuff
yeah,
like that. So yeah, that's the same as Calcutta and Perambur is the same, and
yeah.
Chennai, sorry.
Wow, awesome. What was, so obviously when you moved from Calcutta to St. Bedes, it was the boarding school, right?
Hmm.
But was there any time like, because you had relatives in Perambur or Pallavaram, or was it, did you ever go and spend time there, or was it like St. Bedes, any free time, you're back to Calcutta and then Calcutta back to, oh
Yeah,
wow, okay.
yeah. So the only time we could go back to Calcutta, because back in those days, while there were aeroplanes in India, we were one of those many families in India who couldn't afford to
Yeah,
utilize an airplane like
yeah,
families today
yeah,
utilize in India and across the
yeah,
world, right?
yeah,
So we had to travel by train. And so it couldn't be the Easter vacation or the, you know, Michaelmas holidays that we used
yeah,
to call back in those days. It
yeah,
couldn't be those kind of vacations of 1 week or 10 days that we went back. So we stayed in the school. Sorry, there's a caveat to that. My grandmother, that's my mom's mom, was still in Pallavaram. So there were times we would go for the short vacations of 1 week so to Pallavaram, but when it came to the summer holidays and Christmas holidays and things like that, we would go back to Calcutta.
yeah. Nice. Would you travel by yourself, or did somebody come pick you up? How old were you when you moved to St. Bedes?
I was 11 years old.
Okay. So did you got,
Yeah, and my elder brother was with me, who was about a year and 8 months, about 2 years older to me. We would travel together, and then I had my two cousins also came into St. Bede's couple of years from
yeah,
us, who were also from the
yeah,
east of India, and their parents, of course, obviously were from the south, just like my dad, because that's my dad's elder brother's. children, Floyd and Carl Quintal. They came to St. Bedes, so the four of us would travel back and forth together.
And I mean, the whole reason you went to St. Bede's is because you grew your experience in traveling by trains alone anyway, by traveling the trams. So your dad knew, okay, you clearly know how to travel by yourself. So
Yeah,
why come pick you up?
yeah, exactly. He knew that these guys can take care of themselves. Yeah.
That's amazing that your dad wasn't like upset in the sense like was that all like the same beats, but also that is not, do you see that now as a punishment, or as a thing you needed in your life at that moment in time?
Good question. I'm sure, in his mind it wasn't a punishment. In his mind it was a practical solution to how to tie these two
Yeah.
guys who
Yeah.
are got wings on their ankles, how to
Yeah.
tie them down and get them focused to study
Yeah.
and things like that,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that was the whole objective of him
Yeah.
wanting to do that in some sense, because I know that it broke his. Now, when I look back on hindsight, at that point in time, I was thinking more of it. I know it broke his heart and my mom's heart to, not be
Absolutely.
able to see us every day for
Yeah.
6, 7 months at a stretch. So I think it was more of a practical solution. As far as I'm concerned personally, I think it brought me. I can't speak for my brother, but I speak for me. And since my brother's no more, I can't really
Yeah.
say what toll it took on him. I think it took a good toll on him, but for me, it definitely was a good thing that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always, um, looking back on it now, and especially as a third party, right? I can see those decisions, and as a parent, it's if the bigger picture was your dad wanted what's best for you, and obviously being a loafer wasn't going to help you in life, you know. So as tough as it may seem, it was all because of his investment in you. He just wanted the best for you, and those parenting decisions are so fascinating to study. And it's difficult to make. He could have been your best friend, or he could have been a parent. He chose to be a parent. I don't think it panned out well, right?
Yeah, he was definitely a parent by all. My mom was my friend in all for all practical purposes, how we
Yeah,
talk about it in today's parenting.
yeah,
But my dad was definitely a parent, not a friend. I mean, I was terrified of him till a
yeah,
pretty late age.
yeah,
I mean, not that he was that stern guy who would never talk to me or
yeah,
anything like that.
yeah,
I mean, he would like to have discussions with me, and we had a lot of debates at the dining table
yeah.
over
Nice. Yeah,
current events and stuff like that.
nice.
But there was a certain respect I maintained with him. I mean, I was 2000. I was 42 years old when he passed away, and in my all my life, and I used to smoke back then. I'd never smoked a cigarette in front of him. If he was in my
Yeah,
home, I would walk out and go and have a
yeah,
cigarette with
yeah,
him.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there was that kind of. I'm not trying to say I was a good, respectful guy, but what I'm saying is that there was that kind of respect and fear I had for him.
yeah. That's yeah. I'm sure the cultural differences. You are not unique in that sense. Like, it's a very common thing in India. I can speak to where we are from, that even adult children would not smoke in front of their parents. Whether it's fear or respect or just bad memories of what the last time they got caught smoking, right? For whatever reason, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Now
s-
I had a cousin in Perambur. Sorry, Conrad. I got
yeah.
to tell you that's for
Yes.
to bring in some flavor to this
Yes.
conversation. I had a cousin in Perambur who lived on Main Road. They were born and raised. Rocky Arana and Joffrey Arana. Okay, they had a house on Main Road. They sold that house back in the 80s. Anyway, Joffrey Arana was one of the most funniest guys I ever met in my life. Okay, he's my dad's elder sister's son. And I remember when we were young and we were all starting smoking, uh, his father's name was Norman Arana. Geoffrey said, "Man, I got caught by dad yesterday smoking uh, opposite the church,
Yeah.
And there was a restaurant there which is still there, but it's not got the same name. It was called Cosmos, okay?
Yes.
Yeah, and he said that got me next to Cosmo smoking, and I was with I think I don't know who he was, Conrad de Costa, one of those guys of that generation, at and he said Conrad asked me to light a cigarette for him, so I was lighting Conrad's cigarette and my cigarette, and Dad came and he gave me smack on my head, and I thought, oh, I got caught smoking, and he said, when I started smoking, I started with one cigarette, you're starting with two. It was kind of that was funny that a parent of that generation was cracking a joke about
Yeah,
smoking.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. That's generally people are a lot more. That was not joking time.
yeah, exactly. So that
Oh,
was a
that's
story in the family that went around for years.
so. Were you a young smoker? Did you start smoking early in your life, or when did?
Yes, yes. I think about that a lot because now we have so much knowledge on smoking and how the consequences of smoking, and so many youngsters your age and younger are not smoking. Your generation and younger are not smoking, and it's so good because they're so knowledgeable about it. My two sons, they don't smoke. My nephew who's 28, my niece who's 20, she doesn't smoke. No, none of them smoke, and because there's so much knowledge going around that about
Yeah,
smoking. When we were young, people would walk into the house, they would just pull an ashtray from the
yeah,
center table. You got into a bus, people were smoking. You got
yeah.
into a tram, people were smoking. You got into a train, people were smoking. And I never traveled by airplane back then because we couldn't afford it. But I'm sure people were smoking in airplanes, I gather from newsreels. So yeah, I started smoking at a very young age. I'm not blaming the society, but I'm blaming the lack of knowledge that I didn't have. I started smoking probably at the age of 15 or 16, if not younger.
Which standard is that? 15, 18? Is that ninth ish? Ninth, tenth?
Yeah, you'll be
Yeah,
yeah about
yeah.
actually maybe before that. That's more 77. Yeah. Well, let me think about that. Maybe I was about 14 or 15. Yeah.
And this was at St. Bede's.
This was during my, yeah, not in St. Bedes because obviously St.
Yeah,
Bedes there was no access for us to buy cigarettes.
yeah.
But when I would come out and we were living in Calcutta, I would meet with friends
Got it.
and we would all the friends, all of us would smoke. I used to hang around with a lot of musicians in Calcutta. A lot of musicians were my friends or people who were involved with music, and that was a whole. Not that I was any great musician, I was just hanging out with them. I happened to have friends who were upcoming musicians and still musicians. That was a whole different lifestyle,
Yeah,
if you know what I mean,
yeah, yeah,
without getting too explicit.
yeah, 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 yeah. Unfortunately, well, let's talk about the smoking. So you obviously increased. You probably smoked multiple packs a day and then you quit, right? So you've been cigarette free for how long?
Uh, 2013,
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Congrats.
But here's the caveat to that. I didn't quit because I had the willpower to quit. I kicked. I quit because I got kicked where the sun doesn't shine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got kicked.
Yeah.
Was I don't know if I said this part of my life. From 2012 to 2016, I was posted in Jamaica
Mm.
on deputation. And I was in Jamaica one day, and I took all the people from. We were just starting launching that what is called in call center parlance. That's called nearshore. Offshore is Philippines and India from the U.S. This is nearshore. So we were just launching nearshore, and I had taken the team out for lunch, and we were coming back, and we had Chinese, and I suddenly felt very uncomfortable in my chest, and I suffered that whole week. Saturday, Friday, and Saturday. And then I went to the cardiologist whose name had to be Harry, and he said, "Hey, you're having a heart attack, man."
Oof.
Yeah, and he said, "But you're not that bad gone. My suggestion to you is, since you are from the U.S., get on a plane and go to the U.S., New York, and get treated. And Kingston, Jamaica to New York is a direct 4 hour, 40-minute flight. So I got on the flight, went back to New York, went straight to the hospital from the airport, and they put 3 stents in my heart. And
Mm.
so the reason I've given you that side of the
Yeah.
story is
Yeah.
because I don't want it to look like, hey,
Sure.
I did so great. I had the willpower to do it. It's a very hard habit to kick.
It is. It is. It is. But still, I think a lot of people. I know a lot of people diagnosed with lung cancer and were walking with like on oxygen. They would still smoke. It's not easy to give up.
Not easy.
Even but yeah, congrats. Sometimes unfortunately, you need some a tough motivation. But I'm glad you did. Almost, yeah, more than 10 years. Congrats.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
know people who have given up without having to get frightened out of the
Yeah.
habit,
Yeah.
but in my case, I was frightened out of the habit, and I do have an extremely a good willpower because I was also a heavy drinker back in the
Yeah.
90s,
Yeah.
and I gave up alcohol too. I mean, I gave up alcohol a long time back. So, and then I went dropped and fell off the wagon. But
Yeah.
my
Yeah. Yeah.
willpower is pretty strong.
Yeah. Awesome. Good to hear. Good to hear. So are you like so like you're totally like sober. You don't drink any alcohol at all, like no beer or wine now, or is
No,
good for you?
nothing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So do you
Yeah,
eat
well,
healthy? The only thing the perfect trifecta is to eat super healthy. The egg. So and then you live forever, right? Because you don't drink, you don't smoke. You just how's your diet? Do you watch your diet, or are you kind of eat whatever? Especially Indian food, right? It can get crazy a little bit.
I have a good friend in Calcutta who we know each other from way back when. His name is Rangi Subramanian. In fact, he owned a Chinese restaurant on Nungapakam High Road, opposite landmark called Rangi's. And
Yeah. Wait,
yeah,
what is it called?
Rangis, Rangi's.
Okay, is it still there?
It's still there. It's
Oh,
still
really?
there. It was there from the 80s. It's right opposite Kodambakam High Road when you come onto Nungambakam High
Yeah,
Road.
yeah.
That building over there. Anyway, he when we talk today and he tells me, hey, what did you eat or what did you have for lunch or what you're cooking, and then he tells me, you're a walking time bomb, man. If that answers your question,
Okay.
I don't really. I mean, I watch I should be watching my diet. I don't really. In fact, the reason I started this conversation saying thank you for reminding me, because at 11 o'clock, I was getting some mutton ready to, I was going to cook mutton and ladyfinger curries today.
Wow.
And I was like, and I was telling him when I was going to buy something, I said, hey, I'm going to cook this today. And he said, that's when he said it again to me. He said, I told you many times, you should be eating all that red meat. But anyway, if that answers your question
It
about,
does. It does.
what I watch.
Hey, that's my weakness as well. I don't drink a whole lot. Just a glass of wine, and I was a heavy smoker as well. 3 packs a day, and I started smoking when I was in the seventh standard, all the way past college, past working. Then I just stopped. I think moving away from all my friends who smoked heavily in India helped a lot, but still there was, I would say, a little bit of willpower. I had to force myself. I took the opportunity because, I could still buy cigarettes over here, but I'm glad. Yeah, I haven't smoked in a long time as well, probably 20 years. Yeah. So
Great.
yeah,
Great.
yeah,
Congratulations to you.
yeah, yeah. Thanks. I hear wine is good. A glass of red wine is good. So
It
I
is.
I drink healthy, I suppose.
My cardiologist told me it's good, but the
There we go.
problem with me is I'd given up alcohol in 1999 and I didn't touch a drop till 2010, which was 11 years. And then somebody said, wine is healthy for you
Yeah,
and I started with wine and then, it went from one step to
yeah,
the next. So I
exactly.
realized, no, no,
Yeah,
no, no, it's not for me. It's for people like you who can have that control. I don't have that control.
yeah. No, I hear you because my weakness is when I gave up smoking, I had to give up drinking like even wine for a little bit because it went together, right? If I would take a sip of wine or a sip of beer, I would crave a cigarette because it just went
Yeah,
like peanut butter and jelly, right?
yeah.
So for a while, I had to not do anything, and then I slowly just started back on wine, and it's fine now. Yeah, awesome. Good to hear. So so you said musicians, right? And do you play an instrument?
I pretend to play three chords on a guitar.
Oh yeah.
Elvis, Elvis Presley once said at a concert, I remember, sorry about that. He once said at a concert towards the end of his life, he said, uh, I don't really play the guitar. I've been pretending to all these years. And I thought, yeah, I'm also like that.
That's funny. Awesome. Also, I like I said, I spoke to Eddie just like an intro, like last week, and Eddie's last name is Quintal, and I just happened to ask him, "Hey, do you know Floyd Quintal?" And he said, "Yes, you're related to him." And Floyd Quintal is married my cousin Sandra Brunton, and Floyd was when he's much older. Well, not he's quite a little older than me, but when I was growing up, he was like a good guitarist in the local bands in Perambur. He would play, and I remember going to his house, and there was an acoustic guitar. I was little, and he would play all these things, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds so good." And he gave me my first lesson. Like as a kid, I just picked up the guitar, and he said, "Oh, this is how you do it." And and I really like was enamored by Floyd and the music he could play, like the music we would listen to on tapes, right? He would play on guitar, and that was such a magical thing to hear someone like translate it and play it live in front of me. So musical family. I know Floyd is played a lot in Perambur. Is there anyone else musical in your family? And how are you related to Floyd?
Floyd is the son of my dad's elder brother. And Floyd, his brother Carl, and he's also got another brother Glenn. This and my brother Ronnie and I, uh, uh, because we studied. Glenn didn't study in St. Bedes, but Floyd and Carl studied in St. Bedes, and we used to travel back and forth. And then in Calcutta, we lived right next to each other for many years, and stuff like that. So we were very very close as close as cousins could be, you know. Yeah, we would go to work every day together, Floyd and I. And so Ronnie was very close with Floyd. Ronnie was a musician himself, but he didn't pursue it for more reasons than one, which is a story for another time. But Ronnie was a good musician. And then also, I would like to think I may be wrong because Floyd is also older to me. Ronnie was older to me. And then there's a cousin who I mentioned, Geoffrey Arana,
Okay,
about
yeah,
the smoking
yeah,
story. He's older to Floyd, but I would like to think he was a very good musician and a lot of fantastic voice. He used to play at a lot of dances in Perambur. Uh,
Floyd, right?
no,
Oh,
Geoffrey Arana.
Joffrey. Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I like to think that Ronnie and Floyd were, in some way just like inspired by him and
Mm,
started picking up the bolts and nuts from him. And maybe they went on to be better musicians than them or not. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that somewhere along there, going to spend time in Joffrey's house on
yeah,
Perambur Main Road and
yeah.
him playing the guitar inspired my brother Ronnie and Floyd. So that when you say musical family, yeah, I remember Joffrey was the one who introduced Ronnie way back when, even before Michael Jackson was a thing to jazz and stuff like that. And my brother Ronnie, at a very young age, was big into jazz. I mean, he introduced me to Miles Davis and John Coltrane and stuff like that when we were like 16 and 17. And I used to tell him back then, I used to say, hey, what about all the other real music? And he'll say, what real music are you talking about? Okay, he used to play good guitar. And I would say, what about Michael Jackson and Dire Straits? And he'd say, Dire Straits is okay, but don't talk about. So he had this one side of the spectrum. He was into jazz and blues, and he would introduce me to that music. And he would get very upset with me because I was huge onto the other side of the spectrum with country. And he
Yep.
would say, put that shit off, man.
Yeah.
Put that stuff off. And he would put on Miles Davis. And I didn't really appreciate it at that young age in
Yeah.
our mid-teens.
Yeah.
But as I grow older now, I mean, if you get into my car, one of the XM radio channels that is there is Rail Jazz, which is saved on. So yes,
That's a good story.
music is a very big thing for us. I mean, there was a time when I was, in my teens in Calcutta or older, I could pick up a vinyl record and tell you who was the bassist, who was the lead
Yeah.
guitarist,
Yeah.
who produced this album,
Yeah.
and things like that. Not so much today, but music is a very important part of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. How was how was growing up in Calcutta? Um, like, did you live on a street that had a dense population and where your friends nearby. Because in Perambur, you would have noticed this, right? If you walk down the street, Anglos love the music and they would love the stereo system. So, and they would play it as loud as possible. So, as you walk down the street, you'll hear like all the rail music coming out, all the country music, and you can smell lunch, what's being cooked. Was Calcutta similar, at least from an Anglo-Indian perspective? Or was if you were walking down the streets in Calcutta, is it the same reflection as it was in Madras?
Yeah, where the Anglo-Indian population was congregated,
Yeah.
it was the same.
Okay.
Uh, but and it was, in fact, yesterday I was listening to something and this Billy, not Billy Ray Cyrus, Randy Travis's song came up, which was "I'm Gonna Love You Forever and
Yeah.
Ever."
Yeah. Yeah.
And as soon as that came on, I looked at Monica, my wife, and I said to her, I said, "This is a real Anglo-Indian song," because whenever you would walk down Main Road, you would hear the song from literally every house back
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
early 90s.
Yeah.
And so yes, so just to your point to talk about that, like yeah, music was a big thing in an Anglican congregation.
Yeah. Absolutely. So you left St. Bedes. Did you finish like 12th in St. Bedes?
No, no, no.
Just 10th.
Yeah,
10th. And then where did you go? 11th and 12th. Where did you do that?
I didn't go anywhere. I just
Oh,
started working.
oh wow! Straight to Oberoi.
Yeah,
Okay, that's amazing. And
I don't know.
that is considering where you are now, right?
Uh, I, I was lucky. I met very good leaders who influenced me professionally. I had the opportunity to interact with some the people I would report to. Two of the guys who influenced me were my mentors, were IIT, IIMs, and I used to report to one of them directly, and he used to report that to the other. And these two people highly influenced uh, my career. I was lucky to cross paths with them. So I like to think that I was lucky. I'm sure there are much smarter people than me in this world. I like to think that I was lucky. I was in the right place at the right time.
Yeah. So this was the Oberoi's in Calcutta, right? So you go back
No,
after. Oh no, in Madras.
yeah. So I joined Oberoi's in Calcutta. Then I worked in a couple of other little hotels. And then in 1992, I moved to Chennai, right, to Madras. And I joined Park Sheraton Hotel
Yeah.
in Adia Gate once
Yeah.
upon a time, then Park Sheraton. And I was there I joined there as a telephone operator. So I would pick up the phone. Back then there were telephone switchboards, which you don't have now. I would pick up the phone, welcome to Park Sheraton Hotel and Towers. I still know that by heart. And they would, ask for front office, whatever. My job was to just take a call and connect it and send
Yeah.
it out to the way.
Yeah.
And the general manager over there, Mr. Virmani, at that point in time, called one evening for something one night, and I was at the switchboard and I answered the phone, and I don't know how our conversation got extended. He was talking something, and he had just had a child, and I said, "Congratulations to you and your wife." And after some time, he said, "What are you doing at the back of the hotel? Your communication is, pretty good. You should be at the front of the hotel. Would you like to be there?" I said, "Sure." And so uh, he said, "Meet me in my office tomorrow." I said, "All right." I met him in his office, and he said, "Hey, I want you to be in the reception. Your communication is good. I don't want you in the back of the office." And so that's how I moved to the reception. And in '95, this I'm linking the story to my professional growth. So in '95, there were these 10 or 12 Americans who were staying at the Park Sheraton Hotel for months on end. And when you're staying for months on end, obviously at the front office, especially if you're doing, I was mostly do the afternoon evening shift. They would come back from work. I would meet them, hand over the keys. How are you? Nice to see you. And, the conversations would get a little longer every evening because you're seeing them so often. It's not like, one week and they're gone. And then I remember this lady who I got in touch with after I came to the US. Her name was Nikki Walker. And she's from North Carolina. And she said to me one evening at the Park Sheraton when I didn't even know much about the U.S. Uh, something she started talking about my job and how I like it and how much I'm earning. And then she said to me, I said, "What are you doing in India?" And she said, "We are all work for a company called Bell South Atlanta." And this is 1995.
Interesting.
And India has just opened up the markets for cellular phones, and we are going to launch cellular phones. And I didn't even know what a cellular phone looked like. And we're going to launch cellular phones in India. Our company, Bell South Atlanta, is tied up with another company, and we are launching a company called SkyCell in Chennai. And I said, oh, okay. And she said, would you like to work with us? I like the way you speak and your personality. Would you like to work with us? I said, I don't know anything about cell phones. And she said, you don't have to work on cell phones. I'll tell you what you have to do. And that's how I joined call centers in
Hmm.
1995. Okay. And that was also when call centers in India were still in its embryonic stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why I say I was at the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
So I got
Yeah.
a rudimentary entry into. I worked with SkyCell, which finally went on to become Airtel, and is still Airtel, I think, in Madras. And from there, I moved to call centers, and I moved to Bangalore and joined the Hinduja group. And that's where I met my two mentors who mentored me into business aspect. So this, in any business, there's two aspects to it. So one is the operational part. So I'd learned the operational part from 95 to 2003. I'd learned all the operational parts, how this works, how that works. But I really didn't understand the business. How is, like, to put it in a nutshell, how is money made?
Yeah.
How is money
Yeah.
saved? How is money created in
Yeah.
this business?
Yeah.
That was in 2003 when I joined the Hinduja group, and I was saying my two mentors mentored me because to grow in any business, you could be pretty good at. You can be the best welder on the shop floor, right? But if you don't know, the cost of every minute that you're welding and how to convert that into profit, then
Yeah.
you're going to be a welder all your life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a hobby. It's not a business, It's not yeah, exactly. Wow. So Airtel, I do not know that SkyCell. I did not put it together that uh, that it was owned well essentially by AT&T now, like Bell South. Is Airtel 100% Indian company right now, or is it a subsidiary of AT&T or whatnot? Oh, at
No,
least back.
Bell South Atlanta moved out. There were three partners in SkyCell. Bell South Atlanta from the US, Millicom, which was from Luxembourg in Europe, and Nokia from Sweden,
I think
Switzerland,
so. I think it's Swedish. Yeah.
Swedish, yeah, Nokia. So these three organized, and there was one small company partner. I forget the name from India. Four companies, where they were the major, by the main stakeholders, not the major stakeholders, the four stakeholders. One by one, they moved out, and Airtel acquired them after I had left SkyCell. I don't know whether Airtel today is independently operating in India or they got
Yeah.
any foreign investments.
Yeah. That's fascinating because I swear I might have seen ads for Bell South. I might have dreamed it in India. I don't know. Um, but anyway, so yeah, I mean, like, perfect opportunity, right? That you were there and you met those people, and then you moved to Bangalore. And then so from Bangalore you moved to the US?
No, I was in Bangalore, and then again, I like to keep harping on this that I was in the right place at the right time. I was in Bangalore, and I suggested to the person I was reporting to, whose name was Narasimha Murthy, who was one of my mentors. And I said to him, "We do so much of business with the US, delivering service to them from internet to trucking to packaging." I said, "What is there no business in India where we can deliver service?" And it was just a conversation like this he and I were having one day in his office. And we used to have a lot of conversations from politics to different things. And he said to me, I don't know if it's financially viable. But anyway, it was an idea that was sparked, and then we went on to do the Airtel call center
Wow.
and Vodafone, which was in Bombay. And so when we started that business, since it was one of my what should I say? A discussion where he and I had early. He asked me to join him in that what was called, we moved it and called it the domestic business, right? And he said, "Hey, I'm going to take over this domestic business. I'd like you to join me." I said, "Sure." And so I went to Bombay, I went to Hyderabad, and I went to Durgapur at different periods of time in the 2000 to set up call centers there. And that's where I cut my teeth on how to set up call centers. What's the cost of a seat to build? How to set it up? What are the nitty gritties of from the infrastructure, acquiring, pricing, sourcing, all this stuff to get it started from scratch, identify the property, what kind of property, started from scratch to then, build it into a greenfield project kind of, and then take it into, profit making.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where I cut my teeth: Bombay, Hyderabad, and Durgapur, on domestic call centers. And then when I came to the U.S., when I was immigrating, uh, the CEO of the company at that time, and he's still the CEO, Mr. Partosh Sarkar, asked me, "What are you going to do in the U.S.?" And I said, "I don't know. Maybe the next time you're in New York, I'll be the cab at JFK Airport for you." And he just laughed and he said, "Hey, we did an acquisition in a city called Peoria, Illinois." And I didn't even know where Peoria was. I didn't even know Illinois. And he said, "We did an acquisition in Peoria, Illinois. Uh, you know that?" I said, "Yeah," because I was some kind of involvement I had in that acquisition. Uh, and he said, I'm in New York next month. We'll meet up for lunch." So that's how, long story short, I joined back the company, the same Hinduchat
Yeah.
group in
Wow.
Peoria,
Yeah.
Illinois.
Yeah.
And then because I had set up these call centers in India, they asked me to go to Jamaica and set up the call center over there.
Yeah. So two things, that I think, listening to you talk about that story, that are very valuable for the people, just for the youngsters just starting work, is you didn't just go to work, do your thing, and walk out. You were invested, and you were thinking, and you were invested in the company, that you ask those questions, even, right? Those are the questions generally people leave up to the CEOs to ask, right? Like, hey, why can't we invest in the local market? The people who check in and check out are not asking those questions. They're looking at the clock. They're not invested. They have some other plans, So because not every time it won't pay off every time, but that's an attitude change that pays off in the long run, right? Maybe it won't pan out that you ask a question, you plant a seed, and your manager says, "Hey, good job, be a part of it," but it'll change the worker mentality and have an attitude of being invested and trying to grow the business. So it's a great lesson. Another one is how did you obviously left well. Not many people will leave a company and the company won't hire them back. I don't know a lot of people who can go back to the company they left, you know? So if I think the people who join back companies after they left, there's something special about them because they left well. Obviously, they did a good job and they didn't burn bridges and say, "See ya." If you can go back to a company, I think that says something. So, how did you leave? Obviously, it was a conversation, but you left well, right? Because leaving well is a skill. It's almost as good as your interview when you're trying to join a company. You want to leave as a hero as well, And so how did you leave, and what was that process like?
So back then, I don't know now, back then when you applied for an immigration visa, it took us, my wife and me, it took us about 18 months to complete from filing for the visa to actually acquiring the visa. And our interview for our immigration visa, I'll answer your question better because I said that our interview for our immigration visa was on a very strange day. It was 26/11, which is a huge, 26/11, 2008, which was a huge date in Bombay. The Bombay terrorist attacks happened.
Mm, yeah, yeah,
To 28/11, rather, one of those days. But anyway, I remember because I was going back to Calcutta and my wife said, "Hey, are you watching the news? This terrorist attack." That's the day we had gone for a visa to the Chennai incident. But uh, to your question, which I think was how I left the company, was I was in Durgapur at that time. Now, Durgapur is a small city in the east of India, which is known for its steel plant. It's got a steel plant there, and it's about a 2.5 hour drive from Calcutta airport to Durgapur. And I had set up a call center there from again greenfield project from scratch. And by the time and I had already told my reporting boss, who was the senior vice president, and his boss, who was the CEO, that, "Hey, I'm in the process of immigration, so I might not be in the company very long." So I'd already prepared them that I might be going away. So it was no shock to them, and it was a shock to me and to them that my immigration happened in 18 months, because we thought, hey, it'll take a few years.
yeah,
But it happened in 18 months because we came to know that parents have the highest priority when it comes to immigration at back then. So I prepared them, and then I was in Durgapur, and they asked me uh, to find somebody to head the business over there for them before I. Sorry, I got distracted. Um, Somebody to head the business for them before I left. So I together with HR and placements of stuff like that, I started looking for somebody to head the business because it was a big business. We had 1,700 agents over there,
Mm.
together with support staff. And in a call center, normally 1,700 agents, support staff would make up about 10 to 15%. So we were about 2,000 people there. So they said, hey, Durgapur is so remote from Bangalore. You move out. We have no leader over there who's heading the whole business. Could you find somebody who you think is suitable before you leave? And so I did that, and I did that successfully. And then when I went back to Bangalore and said, "Hey, I found your leader. Here's your leader. Y'all have interviewed him. I've interviewed him. We all like him. He's in place. I'm moving on, sir." And they said, "All right, Eddie, thank you."
Huh. That's great. You found a replacement, and not just
Yeah,
gave them your 2 week notice and say, "See ya. I don't care what happens."
yeah.
It's
No, no. I gave them a 3 month notice.
yeah, yeah. Oh, see, yeah, yeah. That's valuable. That's a valuable lesson for all of
Yeah.
us professionally.
Yeah, I gave them a 3 month notice. Normally, I would like to think that anybody who was immigrating is going to say, I'm never going to meet these guys again. Hey, I'm leaving. Bye. I'm going off to the US. And
Yeah,
no, I gave them a 3 month
yeah,
notice.
yeah,
I told them at the end of November when I got my visa stamped with, my passport stamped with my visa at the end of November. Immediately I sent an email to, the powers that be and said, hey, moving on. And then I left only at the end of February.
yeah.
So it
Oh,
was December, January, and February I worked.
yeah. That's awesome. That's good to hear. So then you moved to Illinois,
Yeah,
and you. So that was nice, right? You all of a sudden your future was looking bright. You thought you were going to like have to look for a job in a new place. It worked
yeah,
out great.
yeah.
Timing again. Like I think luck is on your side. Have you ever seen the movie Daredevil? Not Daredevil. It's the Ryan Reynolds movie. Whatever. They interview a lot of sidekicks, and one of the people they interview, she says, like, they ask, like, what's your superpower? She says, like, I'm lucky. And they're like, what do you mean you're lucky? That's not a superpower. And then they go through the whole movie, and it's kind of funny of how, like, things just happen for them because she's around and she's just lucky. I think you remind me of that person. You're just lucky. Things, like, good things seem to happen to you. You
You're
happen to.
funny. It's funny you say that because yesterday I was talking to a friend in Calcutta, and we were talking about something, and I said, "Man, I'm a high risk taker. I would just take a decision if I thought it was the right thing to do." And I was talking to him about my mentor Murthy, who I used to report to, and I said, Murthy always used to tell me that, hey, one day you take your decisions so quick. One day you're going to put your head into the lion's mouth and get bitten off. And that guy said to me, given your luck, the lion will be toothless.
That's funny. But I think, listen, a lot of people can be at the right place, but if you don't have the character to pull it off, you would have lasted like 1 month after being hired after this Americans hired you. They would have figured out, okay, this dude speaks well, but bad work ethic, right? You'd have been fired like a month after that. So luck is not everything. You have to. It's a good intro, but if you can't back it up by character and work ethic, you're not going to have years behind you, and people are not going to call you back to work for them. So that.
You have to walk the talk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
You have to walk the talk.
yeah,
There's no question about that, Conrad. I mean, you have to be able to. Uh, you have to be. You can hear me?
yeah. I can hear you. Yeah,
Okay. You have to be able. One has to be able to, you know, deliver at the end of the day because my KPIs and my KRAs are tied into the guy I'm reporting. And as you go higher in the chain, those are very visible to the powers that be, right? Whether it be revenue KPIs or KRAs, whether it be, customer satisfaction scores and stuff like that.
yeah,
Those are very visible at the higher level.
yeah.
And so if the guy I'm reporting to, who's the CEO of the company, global CEO of the company, it has to make excuses for me more than once or twice.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be around.
Yeah. One of my favorite, again, I always try when I had a really good manager that I learned a lot. And he told me, that, he asked me to read this thing about Steve Jobs. And whether you like him or not, he was kind of like an angry guy, but he had this rule for people in leadership. He says uh, at a certain level, like the janitor, if he doesn't do his job, he can have an excuse, why he didn't do his job or why he's not. But when you get into leadership, there is no excuse because you have the power. A janitor might say like, I couldn't clean the CEO's office because the door was locked and I just cannot enter into the CEO's office. But a CEO or anybody in leadership just cannot make those excuses. You have to find a solution, which you kind of did in your life, right? And that's why they're calling you back. So you moved. So from there, did you move to Jamaica from Illinois?
Yeah,
The
I
new show.
moved
Okay.
from, and another interesting part of that was I told the organization when they asked me, would you go to Jamaica? This was in 2012. I'd come to the US in 2009 on immigration. In 2012 means 3 years. So I knew I had another 2 years before I had changed my citizenship. And I was going to change my citizenship, you know, immediately as soon as I could. Uh, Even though, a couple of people told me I'm a traitor to do that. But anyway, long story short.
Yeah.
So I told, this guy we were talking to the CEO of the company. I said, listen, uh, I don't want my salary to be paid in Jamaica. I don't want to be an employee of Jamaica because I need to account for my time in 5 years, 2009 to 2014, when I'm going to change my citizenship. I need to account for my time. I can't be out of the country and apply for citizenship for more than, I think, 3 months or five
Yeah.
months back then,
Mm.
something like that. And so I need to get my citizenship. So I would go to Jamaica and work, but I'll be an employee of the US. My salary will be credited here. My taxes will be paid here. And he said, all right, fair enough. And then the other, other conditions I had with him was it was a strange contract.
Sure.
Now, because I reached Jamaica on deputation, Jamaica is a Commonwealth country like India. Okay, so in Jamaica, an Indian passport holder doesn't need to have a visa to enter the country, a visa on arrival. Okay, but the visa on arrival, if you're not don't have a job visa, your visa on arrival is valid only for 1 month as a tourist. So every month I had to leave the island, come back to Miami or Fort Lauderdale or Jersey City, where I moved my base from Peoria, Illinois to New Jersey. And my wife was over there living with our younger son, Dale. And we moved our base over there. And I would I would travel back once a month. And after some time, I was alone. So this became so frequent. And then my wife would travel, and the company agreed to pay for her ticket whenever she wanted to travel. So it was a strange contract I had with them. But even though I was in Jamaica, the reason for me being a US employee was because I did not want to miss the opportunity or the year of my
Yeah.
changing my citizenship.
Yeah. And then from Jamaica, did you move to Nashville?
No, no, I've lived in the last uh, 21 years, Conrad. Monica and I have lived in 3 countries and 17 cities,
Oof,
and
nice.
we're not
Exciting.
running from the cops. So, so we moved to Jersey City. Then from Jersey City again, when I finished with Jamaica and I was tired, and I said, "Hey, I want to work in the US. I wanted to cut the umbilical cord with Hindujas and move back to the US. I moved to Maryland at College Park. I joined a company there. Then I moved to Bowling Green, Kentucky. I joined an organization there. And then from there, I came to Madison, Wisconsin. I worked with Humana, and now I'm in Nashville.
Wow. How did you get the Humana gig? And where did you join at like that level or?
Yeah,
Oh, wow. That's
yeah,
a pretty, I'm sure you learned a lot of lessons because that's a pretty large company and pretty big responsibility. as
Yeah,
well,
yeah. I joined. It was a job I saw on Indeed and applied for. Went through rigorous interviews, a lot of presentations and stuff like that I
Yeah,
had to do.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah,
And so now you're in Nashville, Music City.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, I feel like Anglo Indians of all the places, at least they would love to visit Nashville, right? If not stay in Nashville, it somehow feels a little bit like home, right? It seems familiar, right? Maybe because of the music we listen to. First of all, people are shocked if you. I'm sure you shocked many people by naming some old country music like stars. Like, how do you know that growing up in India? People are shocked, right? But how do you like living in Nashville? Do you get to enjoy the music? Are you down close to downtown?
So I'll answer that question with a story.
Yes, please.
So when I moved from Madison, Wisconsin to Nashville, I moved in the month of August. And the whole month of August, I was staying in a hotel while my wife was still in Madison, Wisconsin, getting the house, together to move. So while I was out hunting, she was, taking care of the base. And so in that first weekend that I was alone in Nashville, Tennessee, that Sunday I was in the hotel, that first weekend, I got up in the morning. I went to George Jones's gravesite.
Mm,
I went to Eddie Rabbitt's gravesite.
yeah.
I went to Bobby Bear's gravesite,
Wow.
and I went to Johnny Cash's gravesite. So that
Wow.
should tell you how much I enjoy the city.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I went and visited the dead, forget the living.
Yeah. It's so Nashville. People don't understand the influence Nashville has on the small community in India. They'd be shocked to know that of the impact they've had. They just assume it's the Western world, like Australia, New Zealand, or or England. But the streets of India are connected to Nashville so tightly.
I
The,
think about that a lot.
yeah.
I've mulled over that a lot in my life because I have such a wide variety of choice of musics I listen to, and because I was involved so close to a lot of musicians, and in my family there were musicians, and so a lot of my friends, especially as they got better with music, got more into jazz, and moved away from the three chord country
Yeah.
kind of music,
Yeah.
right? And then I realized that, hey, why are we Anglo-Indians so, even though there's just so much of music in our community, why are we so limited in the amount of people who listen to jazz and the percentage of people who listen to country music? Because we are a musical community,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And jazz is the, like,
Yeah.
what should I say? It's the cool blue, right? And then how did our community, you know, listen to so many people? 90% of the community fall in love with country music, which is the simple kind of music, three chords. It's nice music. Don't get me wrong. I listen
Yeah.
to it all the time,
Yeah.
and not such a large percentage of jazz. So I've mulled over this. I've never got an answer to it.
Yeah. I was talking to another musician, Orlando, and you know, um, and I was telling him, like Perambur, I can speak. I'm sure Calcutta, I'm sure, or pockets of Anglos everywhere just have world class music. It could have been Nashville, right? Because the country music, and I think I thought about this too. Country music was. I'm sure you heard of this artist called Boxcar Willie. Or they spoke a lot about. Uh, the songs were everyday people songs. They wrote songs about life, about traveling in the train, about riding a horse. So it was almost about the jobs, right? Anglo Indians could relate to that because they were working on the railways and they were small town people. They didn't have a truck to put their feet up and drink beer, but there was an equivalent of that was just very the working man's songs that were simple, that you could just sing in a bar, pick up a guitar and sing at home, right? I think that people related to. But also, I was like talking to Orlando, it would be great if Anglo Indians could record the original music. Who knows? We could have had old timey Anglos from who just made music that were recorded that sang about life on the railways. We could have had our own country songs that, we kind of missed out on that. But I think there's opportunity there to help the Anglo-Indian musicians write those songs about Anglo-Indian life, about the country, whatever the country music is for Anglos, right? But the production quality has to be good. But I think that's where the relation is. It's so the working man's songs that we could relate to. Plus, I think those are the only songs whoever came from Australia probably brought on one cassette, and that got spread around. So it was not choice. It was like, listen to this one tape. Okay, fine. I decide I like this one tape now.
Yeah, I think you make a very interesting point over there, Conrad. I do think that it's the working man's music, but I beg to differ on the terminology of that, and I hear that terminology a
Sure.
lot, even in Nashville, even
Yeah.
among the Caucasian community, who's predominantly the highest listeners of country music in the world, right? The Caucasians of the US. Uh, and while I speak this, I want you to know, and a lot of people do know this, but I want you to know that I'm an avid singer of country music. I sing karaoke and won awards for singing
Oh
country. So
wow. Yeah. Don't just
I'm
slip
not,
that in there. Yeah.
I'm not against country music, but what I'm saying is that where I beg to differ with you is, but I'm not that great. I was very surprised when Sheldon was singing. He was fantastic. Sheldon's a great
Really.
singer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you heard Sheldon singing?
No,
That
but
blew
I've
my
heard.
mind.
I might have, but I know he sang with my friend, so I know he can sing. But I
He
haven't.
can
I don't
sing.
know if I've heard him. Yeah.
He can sing. I can sing. I'll have to practice a song. I mean, I went with him once. We did karaoke, but I haven't sang in years. But he's good. But anyway, the working man music. I think blues and jazz is more from the working man music because that came from conversations that slaves were having with each
Mm,
other
I
so that
agree.
the white man who they called master, I'm not
Yeah.
saying those words, I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
using a word terminology loosely, that they call their master, the white man wouldn't understand what they were saying. So I feel that jazz and blues is more the working man's music than country. Country was more about the broken-hearted man.
Yeah. That's true. I agree. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Blues for sure. Absolutely.
yeah,
Blues and gospel.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Jazz too, if you go back into the history of jazz, I mean, if you go back to the influences of Miles Davis and stuff like that, those guys were like actually crying out in pain
Yeah.
in some form or fashion, right?
Yeah.
I'm not talking about Marcus and all of today. I'm talking about in the 30s and 40s.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. Yeah. Yeah. So I think we can wrap this up. But I have to ask you. I ask this to every Anglo Indian. Did you fly kites and make your own manja?
I didn't make my own manja, but my brother and I, by now, if you haven't figured that out, and if no one's figured that out, we were quite the rebels without cause. Okay, and uh, there was a knock on our door when we were very young before we went to st. Bedes, so that should tell you how young we were. Where the local kite seller came to my dad and said, "Your two sons owe me so much money; they've been buying kites and not paying me." Does that answer your question?
Yes, it answers my. Awesome. Awesome. Yes. Did you play? Were you into marbles?
Of course,
Yeah.
marbles, tops,
Okay.
kites, every sport that was not expensive, I was into.
That's funny. Did you is there was boxing a big thing in Calcutta? Did you have a boxer in your family?
No, we don't. My dad's elder brother was, you know, uh, used to take care of his physique, and I heard he used to box and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And he was a bit of a strong man in the
Yeah.
family. But we Quintals were, uh, and I think these things come down in the family. We Quintals were predominantly known to use our brain more than our brawn.
Yeah. Okay.
So no, we were not. There were a
Yeah.
lot of boxers in Calcutta and stuff like
Yeah.
that, but we were more lovers as a
Yeah.
clan. We were more lovers than fighters.
Yeah. And was your dad? Well, what was your dad's? Was he on the railways or?
No, no, no. He
Okay.
he worked he worked in a private company.
Okay.
My mom and dad also came from very um, humble
Yeah.
beginnings, and
Yeah.
back when they were in school, their only source of money was to work because my dad was in an orphanage, St. Patrick's Sadia,
Got it.
and things like that. And my mom also didn't
Mm.
have a dad, so they just took stenography as their learning in class 10, finished that and took up jobs. So they were both stenographers who went up to become top secretaries of companies. My dad was a secretary of Surinder Kumar Birla, and then he was the secretary of the vice chairman of Larsen and Toubro. So he went up in his
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
his what should I say, in his choice of profession. And my mom and him always worked together. And and when he grew in his profession, my mom was his secretary.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's a what a great story. And lastly, do you was pigeons a big thing in Calcutta and in Anglo-Indian houses, or did you have pigeons?
I first saw, I know people who had pigeons, but the first person I personally knew, because Calcutta is a strong Muslim community. Muslims were a lot with pigeons in Calcutta. I don't know about Chennai, but Muslims were the ones
Mm.
who, reared birds and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But the first time I personally knew somebody who had pigeons was your cousin Sandra Brunton's brother.
Russell, probably.
Russell,
Yeah.
Russell, yeah.
Yeah.
I went to his house. I don't think Floyd was married then, or was he married? I don't remember. Floyd took me,
Yeah.
and this guy started showing me his pigeons, and
Yeah.
that's the first person
Really.
I knew who had pigeons. Yeah.
Yeah, pigeons. That's why, because that's my circle, right? In Perambur, a lot of Anglo Indians had a boxer in the family,
Huh?
and they flew kites, and one out of three Anglos had pigeons on the terrace somewhere, right? And so that it's a huge thing. Maybe it's a more local to Perambur. I don't know, but maybe at least all those things for one person to have. So Russell was like the local kite champion as well,
Yes, yes.
and he had pigeons. Yeah, so that's odd. I mean that's kind of cool that you found that out through Russell. That's funny.
Russell was the little I knew of Russell. I didn't know him very well. I'm sure if you
Yeah,
tell him my name, he may not remember me
yeah.
except for the last name Quintal. Well, I found him back then when I first met him that this guy is a rebel, man. He was like me. I identified with him.
Yes.
He had all these, like different kind of, not run of the mill kind of guy.
Yeah, yeah. Russell was definitely. I think he was the youngest of the brothers, or something like that for sure. He was definitely the rebel because I'm younger than him. So Sandra and Christy, my old cousins, were like they were older, and Russell has a brother Neil. Did not relate to him much, but Russell was like the cool guy for us. He was the cool cousin. He had long hair and he would fly kites, he'd pigeons. He probably smoked some beedies here and there. So he was a rebel that at least I connected with growing up. Russell
Yeah,
Brunton,
Russell
famous
Brunson. Yeah.
name in I think it's whatever Foxon Street. Yeah,
Yeah, Fox's Street. Yeah.
yeah,
His sister Sandra I had the opportunity to know because she was married to Floyd. Was a very nice lady. I mean, it's a
yeah,
sad thing that she passed away at a very young
yeah,
age,
yeah.
but she was also a beautiful personality.
Yeah, I asked Floyd to speak with me because I want to know about the musicians in that era, and just learn from him. He turned me down. He doesn't like being on camera, so maybe he'll see this. He'll see this and be encouraged and be motivated to share some stories.
I hope so because he's eloquently articulate. Let me put it that way. He's eloquently articulate and could be have some pretty interesting stories to tell.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Eddie, thank you so much for taking time off on your Saturday, and I always love listening to people who've advanced in their career because of dedication and ethics and leadership. So I think we learned a lot of lessons from you, and I know a lot of young Anglo Indians watch this, and if you ever want to be somewhere like Eddie is right now, it's good to listen to people who've walked on that path already, learn from them, and grow and invest in your careers. And yeah, Eddie, I think people like you are inspirations, and I'm glad to get you on tape and listen to you. And people like Jeff, I'm getting to meet Jeff on Monday actually, which I'm excited about. So thank you so much, Eddie. I know you and I have spoken a lot. Tell us like 5 minutes about your wife. How did you meet? Tell us the love story, and then we can wrap this up.
Thank you for giving me that opportunity. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I would have been in trouble later. You done said nothing about me. No, she's not like. She and I are completely opposites. I'm the extrovert. She's the introvert. Uh, we met in Madhavaram. She was staying in Madhavaram.
Really? What's a
Yeah.
maiden name?
No, her maiden name is Kolb, Kolb, and she was lived in Perambur with her mother's brother lived in Perambur, who was Walter de Rosa and his children.
Sounds
You know,
familiar. Okay.
Sharon de Rosa is from Illinois now, who's married to Rigo,
Oh, really? Okay.
and her brothers and all, her uncles and all. But anyway, I met her in Madhavaram in 2000 and what was that? Sorry, not 2000, 1992. 1992, I met her. And we got married in 1994. We had moved to Madhavaram from Perambur, and she was living in KKR town, and she knew my dad and mom. And she had told my dad and mom that, hey, don't, you're moving today, so don't worry about you know cooking. I'll cook dinner for you all. So I went to, so we all as a family, my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, and I, we went there to have dinner, and it looks like I never came back.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
So Monica still cooks? Do you still eat Indian food? Cook at home?
yeah. We do. We
Awesome.
cook mostly Indian food. Uh, we eat at home. Monica loves to cook. She used to be a great cook. She's lost cooking. She just returned a couple of weeks back from a 1 month vacation in Melbourne, Australia with her. She's got two brothers who are still alive. The rest of one brother lives in London and the other brother lives in Melbourne. So she had a sibling get together in Australia with them. She just returned
Nice.
from
Yeah.
there. Yeah, she's my rock. She keeps me grounded. I'm the high risk taker. She's the more
Yeah.
logical person who'll say, hold on,
Yeah.
don't rush this. Let's think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. I make decisions quickly. And my wife is a little bit more cautious, so it's a good balance. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a good balance. I'm the talker, she's the listener, so it's a good balance in everything.
That's awesome. And you said you have a son Dale together. Is
We have
how old is Dale?
we have two sons,
Nice.
two two sons. Both are married and two grandchildren, and they're my stepsons, but
Okay.
they're my
Okay.
sons. I mean, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been married to Monica now for 32
Yeah.
years almost. So,
Yeah.
Calvin is 40 years old, and Dale is 38. And then we have two grandchildren who are 38
Nice.
and who are not 30, who are 8 and 9 years old.
Nice.
Arya and Aryan.
Nice.
Arya and Aaron,
Yeah.
two grandchildren.
Are they
Monica and I
local? Do they live
they're
in
in
Nashville?
New Jersey.
Okay.
They
Okay.
live in New Jersey. Yeah.
Okay.
Monica and I had a daughter together. She passed away when she was young, a few weeks after birth, and so, and then I have a nephew and a niece, Donovan Aubert and Donna Aubert, who both happen to be my godchildren too.
Hmm.
My sister and her husband Hansel Aubert nominated me to be their godfather, and Donovan is also Monica's godson. So both of us, Monica and I, are also very close to our
Yeah.
nephew and niece,
Yeah.
Donovan and Donna.
Yeah.
Donovan is in Toronto, Canada,
Okay.
and he works at TD Bank, and he and my niece is studying in Bangalore doing her masters.
Nice. Awesome. Awesome. Well, it looks like you're living the life. You're happy in Nashville. You get to eat some Indian food, and you're doing well. Thanks for sharing your wisdom with us and your time. Thank you so much, Eddie.